morning, and welcome to another episode of Wales X MakersPlace, where we are here to do an amazing interview with our guest, Dr. Shurooq Amin. And we are super grateful to MakersPlace for helping to coordinate this with the Wales members community. As we get ourselves set up, I would like to welcome anybody in the audience. I know that we are on multiple platforms as well as Discord to give any feedback and questions to our guest in the chat, and I will relay those along for us. In getting started here, I would like to introduce our esteemed guest today as an amazing award-winning artist and poet from Kuwait. She actually, has a PhD in, interestingly, it is the intersection of the relationship between, is it poetry and, oh my goodness, I looked this up.
Art.
Art, yes. I was like, art and feelings, and they are all so like they are so much together. But she actually uses art to highlight the hypocrisy and sexism and kind of criticize the patriarchy and really push forward for female empowerment. And that's something that, as we've seen, especially as she's moved into NFTs and the Web3 space, has been a great way to kind of circumvent the censorship and extend her reach in a way to give voices, to the people who really need it. So with that as, a basic introduction, I would like to welcome Shurooq today. And thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to share, my story and my work with a whole new audience. I'm very excited about this. So I'm very grateful. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, and we are grateful for you joining. This is, as I told you before we started, but as I was looking through all of the resources, that I'm going to be kind of sharing as we're having our conversation, I was, more and more kind of having this fangirl moment where I was like, wow, like this is the type of, example that we really need in this space, and we need more voices like Shurooq's to be able to, really have people feel like they're being seen and their stories are being told. And so that's something that I'm super excited about. But maybe, because I'm skipping ahead a little bit, if you wouldn't mind telling us, a little bit of your journey. And I know there's been a lot there, but what I think, is your foundation for, if people didn't know you, you know, what motivates you?
Injustice motivates me, actually. I get asked a lot, like, how do you keep finding inspiration, throughout all these years, 3 decades of painting. And I've I've never struggled from what is known as a creative block, and that is not because I have some kind of power over creativity. It's simply because that is exactly what inspires me, is what's happening around me, events that are happening around me, the injustice of how I've been ostracized in my own country, the injustice that's happening to women and even men in other countries that are the underdog. um, I just can't stand injustice, and that creates a fire inside me, and I want to be able to talk about issues, and I want to be able to express these issues, but I can't. Where I live, I can't do that. Politically, I cannot. um, as a single mom, it's dangerous, and I have received death threats. I have been harassed. My kids have been bullied. So I have to take that all into consideration. And so the best way to do it in a very peaceful way is through art. So for me, my art, I use my activism in my art, so I kind of call it artivism, um, because it really is. That's what it is. It's art for a purpose. It's art for instigating change in the world, positive change. It's art for a message. They're all taboo topics that I'm not allowed to speak about, whether it's the LGBTQ community, or whether it's adultery or corruption or child marriages, or any of these issues. If you think about it, I've probably painted about it. So that's in a nutshell what inspires me.
And, honestly, all of these topics that you've listed, go back to that really strong thread that, you had mentioned in the beginning of what motivates you. It's injustice. It's people not being free to be themselves. And that is an amazingly powerful feeling that I think just about everybody can relate to, at some point or another, but some people far more than others. And so for you, that makes the art very powerful. And I've got the YouTube up for you. I've linked it in the chat for the community because there was actually a video, that you were talking about that and having those taboos and being able to bring light to these types of conversations that will remain taboo until they are talked about enough that they've become normalized as a topic of conversation. And so with your art as well, these are things, and we can go to maybe YouTube to Instagram to see, some examples of the art, that you're creating. And this is actually from your upcoming drop. Just different ways that people are being portrayed and taking back strength.
Yes. Well, you can see in my Instagram the pinned post, the King of Hearts, the Arabian Gulf man kissing the Muslim woman. This was caused such a fuss in my society, and for me, I'm trying to create a paradigm shift within the society because repetition creates immunity in a way. The more we see something, the more immune we become to it. And that could be good or bad. The more violence we see, the more immune we become to violence. And a lot of societies grow with that. And the more love we see, the more we take it for granted because we kind of become immune to it as well. So this is what I'm trying to do with this painting. This was actually a very large acrylic painting sold a few years ago, and I created 10 NFT editions of it because it was so much in demand. And it's just a scene that you never see in the Arab world because it's illegal.
Mhm.
It's like if from the Western perspective, someone looking at this painting would be like, what on earth is the big deal? It's just a kiss. It's like, it's not even, there's no nudity, there's no pornography. Like, what is going on? Why is it such a big deal? It's a big deal because public displays of affection in the Arab region, in the Islamic region, are actually illegal, and you will be thrown in jail even if you kissed your wife in public. So this is not an image that my society visually ever witnesses. So by putting it out there in a large painting, I'm trying to show that love is okay. It's okay to love. It's okay to kiss. It's giving it some sort of you know the normalcy, normalizing
Mhm.
love. Because in our society, it's the type of society where parents would rather their kids see blood and gore and violence and, I don't know, documentaries about serial killers rather than see anything to do with love or sex between two people who are in love, or any displays of relationships, um, gender relationships, whether they're straight or not, just
Mhm.
any intimate relationships. It's bizarre, but that is actually a fact in our society.
And
So yeah.
yeah, and I could see how, essentially the thing that you see more frequently would be then the behaviors that you feel are normalized, the behaviors that you feel are acceptable. Excuse me. And so that, especially as a parent, and I know this is something that, is a motivator for you as well as, I have a couple small children and trying to make sure that, the images that they're consuming and the examples that they're seeing are ones that I would like them to carry forward to the next generation. Like that, you know, is really important. So being able to, as you said, kind of make this paradigm shift to the things that we would like to see from behaviors of, the youth. That's very powerful, but
Absolutely.
so risky.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh my
absolutely. It's
goodness.
a risk, and I don't expect every artist or every creator to take these risks. But for me, it kind of happened organically. I never planned on becoming like an activist or to make any big statements with my art. Um, it really just happened organically when I was getting my divorce, and I started seeing that even at the age of 40 with 4 children, and having had taught at the university for years and years, being a professor, being a published writer, being an exhibited artist, all of these things didn't matter in terms of the respect that I stopped receiving when I became a divorced single mom in an Arab Muslim society. And I started becoming, I was ostracized. I was treated very unfairly. Um, and as I have said previously, I couldn't even rent an apartment for me and my children because every landlord, like pragmatically, I'm talking about logistics and pragmatics of my daily life, every landlord requested a marriage certificate.
Mm.
And all of these things just started escalating, and every bank I went into wouldn't give me a loan. And it was humiliating. And so I was very angry, and there was nothing I could do or say without jeopardizing the safety of my children. And so that's when I created It's a Man's World, which was my first political art collection that got shut down by the Secret Service and got banned in my country. That was 2012.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of my journey as a band artist, and as a speaker against censorship, and as a uh, activist or artivist. That's how it happened. It happened organic. I didn't mean for it to happen, but those were the events that led to that. Uh, you know, where I am today. Really, that was
Right.
the beginning.
And that's such an interesting progression because it's, as you're describing it, it's almost inevitable. Here you were in a position where, you were running into walls and didn't really have an option for, moving forward simply because of the system, and the society that you're living in. So here, by speaking out about that and pointing out, the injustice, that definitely, gave you the momentum and the platform, but in, what it sounds like a very negative and almost dangerous situation, where, you know, the things you have to say are not the things that maybe, those in control want to be out in the world, because that would then extend the power to more people. And
Yes, absolutely.
I was going to ask, I guess, have you seen, as, you're, kind of doing this artivism, if there have been others in, that have reached out with similar stories to yours? Is that, part of the motivation, or is it,
Yeah.
simply a personal belief that this exists even if you're not seeing it?
Oh, I'm definitely seeing it. I get DMs daily for years, ever since I started with It's a Man's World, um, exposing the underlying hypocrisy of the Arabian Gulf man. Um, I've been getting DMs from girls, women, young boys, the LGBTQ community, um, all sorts of DMs and all sorts of emails and all sorts of messages, just saying, thank you for saying something. My story is this, this, this. You speaking up, you are my voice. So there's a lot of people, um, like a young girl would message me and say that her father doesn't allow her to leave the house, or another one would say her father is forcing her to get married, or another married woman would say her husband doesn't allow her to have a job. And it's everywhere. Or so many young guys who would message me and say, I'm gay but I can't say anything, my family would kill me. And you're my voice, I can find, I feel empowered just to see your work, to hear you, blah blah blah. So these people, these are real people, these are real human beings with lives that I don't know them personally, but I ended up feeling so close to them. And I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, that I feel so close to, because I actually now have a responsibility towards them. As a human being, I have a responsibility towards them. And now, I feel obviously I have a responsibility to my collectors as well. So as an art, from an artistic point of view, from an artist point of view, so it all culminates, and works out and makes sense in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you had been mentioning, you'd started with this collection, It's a Man's World. So I've got that,
Yeah.
kind of pulled
Yes.
up on the screen,
Hmm.
and we can see how, a lot of these, would feel controversial, having,
Yeah.
these kind of almost standard scenes
Hmm. Well, this
portrayed
one
in.
with the purple background, because you have to understand that in Kuwait, my
Mhm.
harem in heaven, my harem in heaven, you have to understand, in Kuwait, there's no alcohol, is illegal. Uh, we only get it on the black market. You can't go anywhere and buy alcohol. It's not like places like Dubai or Bahrain where you can go and buy alcohol in a hotel or in a bar. We don't have bars. We don't have alcohol. It's all underground black market. So it's reflected here with
Mhm.
his whiskey bottle being put under a transparent table. So it's kind of like he's the ostrich with its head in the sand. You
Mhm.
can see it, but it thinks that you can't see it, right?
Right.
So I'm making fun of that situation. And he's got all these girls around him, surrounded by these girls, which are his harem in heaven, because our men are promised 70 virgins when they go to heaven in the afterlife. So these are his, his
Mhm.
virgins in that he's imagining that he's going to get when he goes to heaven. It's very sarcastic, it's mocking for sure, makes fun of a lot of things, from their concept of religion to their concept of gender dynamics to the black market situation, the prohibition, all of these things. So yeah, um banned.
That's right. And and it's one of those things that, at first look, you're like, before you see the small details, you're like, oh, it's, a gentleman on a couch and, he's relaxing. And then, as you said, you point out to, his harem and the alcohol and things that, really are not maybe as they seem. And that, is kind of a trend as we're looking through your art, calling out the subtleties that really are, those ongoing injustices and, the issues with society. And,
Yeah,
got,
absolutely.
the hand holding here, which has multiple stories, I think, that could be attributed to it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's definitely, as you said, kind of moving on
Yeah.
the activism and different
Like,
ways of viewing.
I like him, I like her. The
Mm.
yellow one, I like him, I like her. Obviously talks about the LGBTQ community, but the hidden, being in the closet. I have a painting actually called In the Closet. And how, the seemingly straight couple are together, and then the gay couple are together, and yet one from each couple is actually holding hands under the couch. So it's all about that kind of um, underground, complicated dynamic of gender relations in the country, because everything is forbidden. And
Mhm.
when everything is forbidden, it makes for a lot of frustration, confusion. Uh, yeah, it's messed up. It's not. There's no black and white. Everything is just messed up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to get that link shared in the community so that way they can follow along as we're looking here. Um, And so I guess from this collection, because you said, this is kind of where you started,
Yeah.
you've got many other collections. So I guess where did you go next? Because while there's been similar themes, there's also been, I think an interesting progression of topics.
Hmm. Absolutely. I've got following It's a Man's World. I had popcornographic, which
Okay.
is a word that was used by my daughter one day. She came back from school. It's the one on the right. Yes,
Yeah.
popcornographic. She used the word. She came back from school and she was saying, because my work was in every media, on the TV, on the in local newspapers, and people were just kind of making fun of the work.
Mhm.
Not They weren't showing it because they're proud of it. They were showing it to make fun of it. Um, and so my daughter asked me why her friends were telling her that your mom is popcornographic.
Mhm.
She used the word popcornographic because she was too young to say pornographic.
Mhm.
And immediately I clung on to that word and I said, yes, this is going to be the title of my next show because it's a nonsensical word. They cannot censor it. No one can, Google can't
Right.
can't flag it. It's just a word that's been completely made up, but everybody knows what it means, the connotation behind it, right?
Right. And it has
And
such an interesting connotation because it's a combination of that, the pornographic but entertainment. Like people are always trying to get the
exactly,
popcorn for the drama and
exactly, like get your popcorn and sit and watch what's going to happen next, and I
mhm.
just again making fun of the whole situation I found myself in. I just was trying to make light of it and make fun and poke fun at the censors. At this painting I used the titles were very important to me, partly because of my PhD in ekphrasis, which is the intersection of text with image. And
Mhm.
so every title is thought of very carefully with the analogy that it takes from cultural and literary history. So, for example, I've got Natural Born Censors from Tarantino's famous movie, Natural Born Killers.
Okay.
And here we see they are, instead of killing her, they're censoring her. So, natural born censors. They've got her in her pretty Polly package, like a Barbie doll. Um, and you see the little puppets hanging from the strings. They've got the Hannibal masks on, analogies to Hannibal, how he eats his victims. And then at the same time, this very gory message is kind of lightened and softened by this beautiful oceanic forest that they're all kind of stepping in or swimming in, and it kind of just um, incites hope, projects hope for the future. But also, there's a lot of tiny little nuances and symbolisms there, from flowers that look like Georgia O'Keeffe's vaginas to all sorts of things. So I like to play a lot with history, analogy, literature. And especially things that were censored in the past, like the Grapes of Wrath. I have a painting called The Dates of Wrath,
Oh,
and that
nice.
pokes fun at the concept of virginity. This one, The Dates of Wrath. And you see the man, he's pointing at her vagina and saying, "Don't touch it." Like he's telling the audience, "Don't, stay away. You're not supposed to touch this." She
Right.
has to remain a virgin until she's married. And
Mhm.
this is the situation. Even if you're 40, 50, 60 years old, you've gone through menopause, you're still meant to be a virgin when you first get married. It's absurd. However, for men, it's absolutely okay to have as many conquests as possible. Um, so yeah, it is that old, very pre-Victorian mentality that is still very much with us in my society. So popcornographic, as a collection, of course, I did not show it in Kuwait. I
Mhm.
showed it abroad, and yeah, it was just another statement, poking fun at the censors. And then it went from there. I went on to another collection that took on more political issues, that I actually ended up showing at the Venice Biennale. Ended up being the first Kuwaiti female artist to be invited to the Venice Biennale. with We Built This City on Art and Love. Um, and I think that was the one with the kiss.
Yes.
Yeah, We Built the City on Art and Love. And you can see, for example, making fun of the cosmetic culture with the Mad Hattress, the fashionista on crutches. It doesn't matter how, how uncomfortable she is. She's so uncomfortable. She's on crutches, but she's still gonna go get her, cosmetic surgeries. She's gonna wear those heels. She's gonna get into that dress, and just the pressure put on women to look a certain way. And this is, of course, a more universal statement. But again, in my society, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. Girls as young as 16 years old walk around with the plaster on their nose, very proud that they got their nose done. And there's just a lot of messages. There's a very political painting here called A Piece of the Pie. Who Stole the Tarts? And this painting with the pie. She's holding the pie is so getting so heavy with these politicians. They're fighting each other to sit on the throne and sit on their political position. The red tape is, of course, red tape, bureaucracy. And she's just telling the audience, shh, don't say it. Let them fight over this pie. While they're fighting over this pie or their position of power, she's growing into this gigantic version of herself, and she's going to take over. And this painting is actually being studied in several universities around the Middle East right now, as part of the final exam for art students in college.
Oh my
I know that
goodness.
because they message me and ask me, hey, our professor gave us your painting and we want to know, what does it mean? And of course, and I get hundreds of these messages, and I can't reply because you guys have to figure it out yourself. Otherwise, everybody's going to have the same answer.
Right.
But
And
yeah, so
that's
hmm,
something that I noticed when I was going through your art. There are so many, not just the pop culture references, but I'm a huge Alice in Wonderland fan, and like seeing so many references because that,
yeah,
is such an interesting story, and so it's, this is another one. They stole the tarts, but she's got the same, kind of blue dress and growing bigger and
yeah,
gaining that power, and
yeah,
that is such a fun way to relate these important topics to things that people are already a little bit familiar with. So it makes, connects those
yeah,
dots for them.
yeah,
How fun. And this collection actually, we built the city on art and love, as you mentioned, has a lot of references to, the expectations on women,
yeah,
which I think is maybe a good point for us to move to your current collection, which is going to be on MakersPlace, right?
yes.
So let's move over there and take a peek because we're looking at A Woman of Importance, the knife series. And so this is an interesting, slightly different view on women from the image that we saw before, but in such a fun and, satirical way with these knives.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this new collection. Basically taking of course, every size of woman,
Mm,
and showing the empowerment she feels now, taking the knife, which is the weapon of the patriarchy, and using it against them by slicing through these pomegranates, and slicing through history, and slicing through expectations of what is expected of her as a woman. I've removed her clothes for the first time ever. I'm slowly removing her clothes. Obviously, I can't show this in anywhere in my society, but it's on MakersPlace and it's on the blockchain, and that is the beauty of NFTs and the beauty of Web3, that it cannot be accessed by any government. Um, I'm using the abaya, which we use in my society to cover up and be modest. I'm using it to actually uncover and show her sexuality through it, because it is used in my society in a way that is very ironic, because a lot of a lot of women in my culture, they will actually use the abaya to cover their heads, and then they use the niqab to cover their faces, so that they can have the freedom to go meet their boyfriends, and the freedom to go see whoever they want to see without anyone in the street recognizing them.
Mhm.
And so they're using it against the patriarchy. The patriarchy imposes it on the women, and they're saying, okay, you want us to wear it, we'll wear it. And underneath, she's got her sexy mini dress on, or her, her lingerie from Victoria's Secret or whatever. And so she's really using it against the patriarchy. So I'm using all of these motifs: the abaya, the knife, the pomegranate that has been used in the past in our poetry and culture historically, as a symbol of sexuality and fertility, how fertile a woman is. All of these motifs I'm using um, to actually attack the patriarchy in a very aesthetic, very kind of gentle yet powerful way, subtle and yet not so subtle. It's just the right amount of, like Goldilocks said, just right, you know.
Yes. And these are so fun. And, it's interesting too, because, one of the things that I think maybe isn't considered is, as women are covered, what is underneath that cover. In this case, she's got purple hair, she's got, makeup, she's, really applied a lot of, extra effort to her appearance, even though, she's going to be covered up or was covered up. And that, I think, is telling as well.
Hmm.
Um, and moving forward, we've also got, in this series, women who are very uncovered,
Yeah.
in their swimwear, out in the sunshine. We've
Hmm.
got sky bathing. We've got a sunflower. She's like this sassy pose. I love it.
I love her. Yeah, I love her. She's so sassy. She's just like, I love her. She was the first one I did for this collection, and she inspired the rest of the collection. And every single one of these, actually, for the first time ever, I've actually used my ekphrastic background fully as a
Mhm.
creator, because every one of these NFTs or paintings, digital paintings, comes with its own poem specifically for that story. So the poem kind of completes the story, but you only get the full of it, completeness of it, when you purchase the NFT, and then it unlocks. Because in the description of each painting, I've given a very fun, casual, conversational like wording.
Mhm.
Um, Rather than a more academic type of wording. It's very like, you know, sunflower is basking in the sun. She's in love with love. She opens herself up. It's very, very casual way of explaining, like I'm telling a friend.
Mhm.
However, when you get the poem and you unlock the poem is very, very interesting, because it's extremely uh, kind of very powerful, very strong, very sexual, and really delves deep into that essence of this collection. So that's
Wow.
kind of an exciting surprise for the collector. Yeah.
And that's interesting too, because I noticed as I was looking through that, as you mentioned, each one of these has this unlockable content that has a different poem. So, in order to, experience the art as in its entirety, you need to be able to own that. And then that, unlocks this extra, I was going to say experience, but it's
Yeah.
really more than that. It's completing
Yes.
the story.
Yes. Yeah. That's the ekphrastic nature of it. The relationship between art and poetry, the relationship between text and image. And it's Leonardo said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But on the other hand, if you think about it, would you ever really experience the glory of a painting? Let's say, um, one of Klimt's paintings, unless you've actually walked into the museum and seen it, like his massive painting Medicine, unless you've walked in the museum and seen it hanging on the wall from floor to massive ceiling, you won't really experience the glory of that from a book or from a monitor. Whereas with the poem, with the text, it doesn't matter where you read it, you are always going to experience it in the same way because you're actually adding your own associations to it.
And that is such a good point, having, that extra experience. And in this case, you're experiencing the art digitally, but then you've got the poem, and then you put them together, and you get something entirely new, because even though a picture is worth 1,000 words, there are so many different ways to interpret a picture. And without that extra context, and now you're given, the poem to give it that context, and maybe, suddenly the picture I'm viewing has extra meaning or a different meaning, or takes a turn that I, didn't initially see, simply because my own experience is, outside the realm of what, this is speaking to.
Yeah. And for me, as an artist from the Middle East who's, living in Web3 now and with a different audience that's allowing me freedom, it's really important to convey my message and convey um, a reference to where I come from, because otherwise people in the West are just not going to get it without me explaining the context of where I'm from and the context of being banned and why. Then it's very difficult to fully understand the power of that image over an entire society.
Is, oh my goodness, so much power, I think, is here in being able to, you know I guess for me, looking at these, it's seeing, the different representations of women. They're all women, but they look so different. And that's something that, if we're looking at historical, advertising, no matter where you're at, like, there's always been kind of the stereotypical how to be. And even as a little kid, I was like, I don't think I fit into these molds. And no matter how hard I tried, I didn't. And
Yeah,
so seeing like this, I just love this. Like, this is all, you know, so much. Like, she's so happy being
yeah,
herself
yeah,
without having to feel like she needs to change. Like, that's kind of the vibe that I get, which is
yeah.
magical. Oh my goodness. Um, Not to sidetrack the story a little, but I had completely forgotten, and the chat has reminded me that there is a POAP available to the community for attending today's event. And so we should share that, so that way people can, remember and note that they were here watching this amazing presentation with you. So if you open your POAP app, it's on your iOS or Android device, and you can, if you don't already have the app, download it. The POAP will be available till 10 a.m. Eastern. And you'll go in and you'll select Mint a POAP and use a secret word. And it's the knife series. So very relevant because it is the name of your upcoming drop. It's all lowercase, no spaces, just the knife series. And if you enter that, then it should mint the POAP for people. So we'll make sure that we get that set up and commemorate that you were here. And now, with that side note covered, sorry for the interruption, but this is so exciting. And this exhibition is, the drop is happening, and it looks like there's 4 hours and 12 minutes as a countdown that's happening for each of these one of ones. So this is something that if people are interested, like, the countdown is on for sure.
Yes, it's very exciting, definitely.
How exciting. And are there, I know this is, definitely, the primary thing that's happening, but are there other exhibitions that you're, working toward? Because it seemed like when we were looking at your art gallery, and it was not this one. Here we go. You've had these many different collections and exhibitions. So we're at the knife series. But what's next?
Well, A Woman of Importance is going to be several series. After the knife series, there's going to be the gun series, the skull series, the Thorpe series, and it's going to continue until pretty much next year. It's going to be a whole year of A Woman of Importance. Uh, but it's going to be like a subdivision of that. So the knife series followed by the gun series and so on.
Perfect. And that'll be something that the community will be able to follow along on. And I would guess that they maybe show up in your art gallery as another one of these type of collections that will then grow as the series evolves.
Yes, I'll definitely be adding it to the art gallery and to the NFT gallery in my website. Um, so yeah, for sure, yeah.
Perfect. And has there been during our conversation today, because I know that we're getting close to the hour mark and I don't want to keep you, but has there been anything that I haven't asked about or we haven't talked about that is important for the community to know?
Well, because I've been banned in my country, and so I've decided to kind of do something for the NFT community in Kuwait that my government can't like stop, which is the first ever NFT exhibition in Kuwait. And it started with a seed of an idea 6 months ago, ended up having like hundreds of applications, chose 100 out of the applications. And now the exhibition is called Wag Me. It's going strong. It's going so strong. We've decided to keep it, me and the gallery owner, till the end of the year for now. And I had talks. I had people come from abroad to talk about onboarding the entire country onto NFTs because it's a virgin country, knows nothing about NFTs or Web3. Onboarding creators and talking about everything from how to mint to how to collect to freedom within Web3, because this is the most important thing, that these girls who were messaging me, telling me that they can't even leave their bedroom, I would tell them, well, if you can't leave your bedroom, you actually have an entire metaverse now, and you can create your works, put them on the blockchain freely, and no one, your father, your husband, the government, cannot access them. And these girls are finding freedom. So I'm now trying to empower girls and women and any of the underdogs from the gay community as well, trying to empower them to find their freedom in my country, um, without being punished for it via Web3. So this is amazing, and it's been so amazing that we've decided to turn WAGME into an actual biennale, which will be the first NFT biennale, which is really, really incredible and exciting and ironic, considering that it's happening in a country that doesn't want to see any of this work and that has actually banned my own work.
Mhm.
So it's amazing how life goes around full circle.
That it does. And, in the case of, creating this art, that is telling stories and empowering people in the way that you're doing, the fact that it's come full circle, I want to say is no surprise because it is so meaningful that of course it should gain traction and continue to shift the conversation and kind of as you said before change that paradigm because now in this case people can put their art on the blockchain. They can find ways to avoid the censorship and still get the stories out there, and that is
Yeah,
so powerful.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'm very grateful that I have a platform to speak my story. I was a speaker at NFT London, and I had a massive stage that I could actually share this story with there. So that was very gratifying. And being here with you is very gratifying as well. And I'm very grateful for it. Very humbled by it.
I will say the community, as I've been watching the Discord chat, people are so moved by the stories that you're telling and kind of this mission that you're on to combat injustices, and we've got actually my co-host for one of our other whale events. She was like super pumped up about the female empowerment as another woman in the space, and so this is just like even seeing the people's responses here. It's so moving. And we're just very lucky to have you here. So thank you so much for joining today and sharing your story and your art with us.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely my pleasure, and I'm so happy to be here and really happy to share my story. And yeah, excited about the drop.
We are also excited about the drop. And so, as a reminder, I'm going to post a link in the chat again so that way everybody can easily access that. And this amazing art that it has the 4-hour countdown, so how very timely. And as always, a huge thank you to MakersPlace for helping to coordinate this conversation and get these amazing stories out in front of the community, because this is such an important topic, and things that people need to be talked about, because the more you talk about it, the less taboo it is. So the bigger the platform we can give it, the better.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. I
Great.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there's many more kudos coming from the chat your way, and people are very inspired by your work. Shurooq, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you to Makers Place and Whale members for, showing up and supporting. And we will continue to follow along your journey and cheer you on and push these messages out into the space to help empower as many people as we can.
Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who has been listening. And I really appreciate your presence here and taking time out of your busy days and lives to listen to me when you probably don't know who I am. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, and I'm just grateful to be part of this community. This is the best community on the planet.
This is definitely amazing, and we've got many more fans. Like I said, before we started, I'll reiterate, but like going through this, I was just like super fangirling about all of the imagery and the messaging and the fact that, you're really getting these messages out there, and that's amazing. So with that, we will close out the stream for the day. We will continue to follow along and support your work in any ways we can. And I'm sure that we'll be in touch as you continue to roll out the rest of this series. So thank you
Thank you.
again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.